Yeah, this is actually pretty good timing. It wasn't planned this way, but actually, I guess like most people around our age, I imagine 9/11 was kind of the defining event. I was a sophomore in high school when that happened, and it just that kind of triggered. That's about the decision time, I think, for a lot of people. That's 15, 16, 17 years old, and that was a big enough event for me to want to pursue the military. Both of my grandparents were in. Grandfather's in the Air Force on my dad's side. My mom's side, he was in the Army. And so I kind of grew up with it a little bit, like the normal kids playing Army kind of stuff. But yeah, 9/11, man, really directed me to want to do something. I wanted to just go into the military. My parents said, you got to go to college. So we found this middle ground at West Point. And I was fortunate to, well, you do both at the same time. And I was fortunate, really fortunate.
Like in the middle grounds of West Point.
Well, so if I would have just said military at that point, my parents would have said no. Because I brought up West Point, and they said no. Yeah, I get it, man. That was, 2003 on or about. On my visit to the academy, we were rolling tanks into Iraq. So they're like, why no?
Yeah.
Easy answer. You're not going to do that. And over time kind of warmed down, and they were super supportive, of course, as soon as we made that decision. But so that was it. That was kind of the deciding factor, was 9/11. And then, again, fortunate to be able to attend the military academy. And then from there to 101st, field artillery officer. And that's about where the military career, that's really where the military part began.
What was West Point like? I've noticed you guys, obviously, West Pointers. Marine Corps is Naval Academy, whatever that is. It's I can't remember Annapolis or whatever. I think
just a dump of the place.
I swore we had West Pointers, but maybe I'm completely wrong about that. Maybe they're talking smack about West Pointers, and I thought they said they were from West Point, so I might be wrong, because I told that people, I was like, yeah, Marine has West Pointers. They're like, what you talk about? That's the Army. And I'm like, maybe I have false memories. Maybe
technically you can cross branch, but it's
typically
like we're talking like one or two people a year, maybe.
Yeah. So they, but yeah, that's awesome. So how was the experience at West Point? Like, did you want to do infantry? I know you're intel, correct? Or how did that all kind of shape out? Because you're kind of like, don't they like kind of hone you in from like, not day one, but everyone starts to what they're wanting to do. I mean, my buddy Tyler Merritt, CEO of 9/11 Apparel, he's a 160th SOAR guy, and so it's like, I think they were piloting in that aspect or where they wanted to go. Mm-hmm. So how does that work?
So fun fact, I delivered Tyler's laundry. He was a senior in my company when I was a freshman, and we had to deliver laundry to those guys, to everybody when you're a freshman. And Tyler was actually, I hadn't spoken to him since he graduated. I didn't really speak to him when he was there.
Dude, he would love to talk. I'm plugging Tyler.
But there's a disconnect there between freshmen and seniors. Yeah. But he was one of the guys where you got to go around all these different rooms. It's part of like this very light hazing kind of stuff, and drop off the laundry. And everybody wanted his room because he was always just super chill. He's like, whatever, dude, just set it down. Whereas other people, you go in there and they'd make you recite some sort of knowledge or put you on the spot or make you feel like a jerk or an idiot. Tyler was always like you wanted his room. Yeah. But it was good. It was an experience I'd do again. I'd recommend it to anybody. If my daughter wants to go that route when she gets to be the right age, I'd say go for it. It's become, I mean, it's kind of who I am at this point, to be honest. It's that kind of forging of you. It's 4 years, of course. You come out with a bachelor's degree, but you really spend like 4 years there. They call it the 47-month experience because you start in June and you do kind of a modified basic training. It's basic training, about 2 months long. It's run by cadets, but implemented by cadets. But then you have an active duty unit that's there overseeing the training. So 10th Mountain, 100, I think when we were there it was 10th Mountain, sent a battalion out, and they kind of oversee the lane. So you've got this weird mix of junior and seniors as cadets that really know nothing about the military still, and they're running a lane with some specialists and PFCs talking about room clearing. But those specialists just got back from like an 18-month tour in Iraq or something. So it's pretty unique experience, but a very different basic training, kind of a condensed basic training. And then you're into the academic year, and you don't do much military during the year. You're in a uniform, military structure, start to finish. All of the classes have like a military slant. So it's normal like geography and chemistry and history and all that stuff. But like the geometry or the geography class, our capstone was like a terrain analysis for the Normandy beaches on D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's just normal geography, but you're going to look at like how to bring tanks ashore back in 1944.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of like just a little bit over. But then the summers are tied up. You got about 2 weeks off each summer. You're running off doing other training, field training. I got to go to Airborne school while I was there. They sent cadets to air assault. Yeah. They stopped sending people to Ranger school. They used to send cadets to Ranger, Sapper, and Seer.
Really?
Yeah. One of my buddies went to Seer. Good, awesome dude, Danny Schwartz. And they stopped sending them because if you recycle in one of those, that's your whole summer.
Oh, got it.
So if you make it like halfway through Ranger school and then you recycle, you can't recycle because you have to go back to class.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wasting a slot. And with Seer, they stopped sending guys, at least for a period of time, because they came out of that course so beat up.
Really?
They like couldn't do anything the rest of the summer.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because like Seer, well, granted, the one they offered us was only like a week long. Mm-hmm. What was your guys'?
I don't know. I want to say it was longer than a.
Yeah,
I have 2 weeks in my mind, but again,
it might have been 2 weeks. We were like the ones they were trying to send us to for Seer school was like, it might have been 2 weeks, but I remember them saying it was like when you get tied up, hogtied, and face down, like that experience was only like, I shouldn't say only 3 or 4 days, but they were like classroom and that. I could have sworn maybe it was 2 weeks or 10.
Hey man, I got you only 3 days of getting hunted through the woods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fine. I had gotten offered twice, and both times it didn't work out. They pulled a slot the first time, so they gave it to me, and they're like, hey, and then the MEU took it. The second time, they were like, hey, you have it. I joined the ETT team in the regiment out of the battalion, and they were like, well, we can't give it to anybody. It's not like we can give it to someone else in the regiment, so if you want it or not. And I was like, well, no, can't go to Seer in the middle of, like, I'm training for Afghanistan now, so I'm out. So the 2 times I was offered, and I always wanted to do it because it was kind of
unique, man.
Marine sniper thing. Like, we're supposed to be qualified, but they don't. But it's also very cool of, like, if you have it, it's like one more school to check off. Like, oh, I went to Seer school. It's like a badge of honor.
Of course. I never really had the opportunity to go. I'm an artillery guy, conventional military. It was never really in the cards. Technically, I guess I could have competed for it at West Point. I would not have gotten it. But just based off class rank, like I wasn't going to get it in retrospect. But I agree. It would have been cool to do.
So like when you're going through West Point then, I mean, is your day structured? You guys have to get up at 6 a.m., PT, go to class. What's your nights like? Do you guys like, does it get a little bit better? Because like in my head, I'm like, boot camp sucked for 3 months. Yeah. But you're constantly like, talk about West Point, like they can't do that for 4 years straight. So clearly there's breaks. Like you said, like classes, and you're not getting yelled at by DIs in the classroom. It's more of like, oh yeah, we're going to college class now. And what, like, so what's that like day to day then? So how was your, is it like nightmarish? Is it the first year sucks and then you kind of like get in a groove, or what's that like?
I wouldn't call it nightmarish. It was more, it was a grind. Like every day was a grind, like a long road march, and you could hardly see the end. Like, because there was every day until that very last final you take your senior year, you're at risk of not graduating. It's tough, and they push it. So every semester you're taking about 20 hours of classes, so it's a full load. Every day you get up, you've got to clean your room, shave, shower, have the uniform on, and then have the room ready for inspection throughout the day before you go out to breakfast formation at like 6:45. Then you march in together. Everybody has breakfast at the same time. Then you go off to classes. Then we all have lunch together at the same time. More classes, and then you're either doing parade prep, playing sports, or military training in the afternoon. That wraps up around 5 or 6. Dinner, and then it's studying. And the professors made a point of kind of my biggest takeaway from West Point is they overload you. There's more every day to do than you have time, and it's not close. So most of the instructors would try to give you 1 to 2 hours of homework. Well, if you're taking 7 hours of classes in a day, like you don't have 14 hours before the next class day starts. You don't have 7 hours of time unless you're going to sleep at 3 or 4 in the morning. So from right away, you had to learn how to prioritize certain things and figure out, like, where do I need to put my energy and not? What do I have time to do and not? What do I need to work with somebody on, and all of that stuff? It got, I don't want to say easier. I'm not very smart, so the academic part was hard for me start to finish. That was a real challenge for me, but you start to get more privileges as the years go on. So your freshman year, you can't talk outside. You have to square all the corners inside. It kind of sucks, to be honest. Like, I got to leave for Labor Day, and then Thanksgiving and Christmas, Martin Luther King, President's Day, and spring break. So we had 6 opportunities to leave post, essentially freshman year. The rest of that, you're there. Sophomore year, you get a couple more weekends you can take off. Junior year, a couple more, and you can bring a car out for the back half of junior year. And then senior year, technically, you could leave every weekend. But it's the same thing, where, like, you have so much to do that you can't just go on vacation every weekend. So it was tough, but some of my best friends are from that. I mean, it genuinely is the group of close friends I have now. You know, you've got the guys that you're in combat with, you're deployed with, and like that is different than like any other group. Yeah. A right up against that are the guys that I went to West Point with.
Nice.
A small core group, just because we, for 4 years, kind of had to lean on each other.
Yeah.
It was not life or death.
Yeah.
But at the time, when you're 18, 19, 20, that was hands down the hardest thing I'd done, and it wasn't close.
Yeah. I always thought about that too, because like boot camp, you get for the Marine Corps experience, like it's intense for 3 months, and then things get a little better. Yeah, obviously you go to infantry school, then you get to the unit and what. But I remember hearing about West Point. It's like they kind of treat you like a boot for the first like year or two, and then you, granted, but you are an officer, so there's like a much brighter light at the end of the tunnel than becoming like enlisted. You know what I mean? Like kind of like going, all right, got to the unit. Life is still gonna suck for a long time. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, but like I imagine that, like I said, you're because being a college kid, you're like, I'm sure you're looking at your friends. They're like, what are you talking about? We're going out all the time. I remember my ex-girlfriend. I came in like a visitor from boot camp. It was her everyone's first semesters, and I'm like, what's your schedule like? She's like, I got classes on Mondays, Wednesday, and like Friday. And I'm like, so you want to no. It's like, so what's your class schedule like on? She's like, I go to class for like 2-3 hours on Monday and maybe another, and then like Wednesday, it's a hard day. I go to class for 5 hours, so I have 2 classes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Friday is like 2 classes. I'm like, are you kidding? Seriously? That's it? Like that's all you do? You have all this free time, and it was just like kind of blew me away on the college experience side. I
don't think I would have done well in that, for what it's worth. I think I needed more structure. Yeah. Just in retrospect. But something else they do that I always kind of bypass is, you mentioned that like everybody there is becoming an officer. That's the route they're taking. So a lot of the stuff they overload on you is, you asked about PT. There's no organized PT.
Oh, really?
Partially because the campus isn't that big. It's not very conducive to like Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or anything where like you can just shut down whole sections. And usually it's there's just not a good way to do it in the morning. So every so often, maybe a couple times a semester, there'd be something organized, but essentially it was on you.
Oh, really? Okay.
You're going to do a fitness test every semester, be in shape.
Yeah.
So, and the way they kind of wrote that off was, you're responsible for your own fitness. Mm-hmm. It worked for most people, I would say. But so then on top of all that chaos that is your day-to-day, you got to get to the gym, got to find times to run, got to find time to do that stuff. But one of the things they did that was really kind of, in retrospect, kind of guiding you towards things you would do as an officer, is you had to have a ton of stuff memorized, especially your freshman year. Mm-hmm. So at any given point, you had to know the next 3 meals. They're being served in the chow hall. So if we were right now, a senior stopped me on the street out at West Point, I would have to know breakfast and lunch tomorrow, and then breakfast the day after. Mm-hmm. So every morning before you go out to first formation, you've got to look over the menu for the week and memorize the next 3 meals in case anybody asks you. You had to, all sorts of different, like just phrases and quotes and things like that, numbers, the silly stuff that in basic training too, right? Like rate of fire, all that nonsense. But also the days to big events. Mm-hmm. So at any given point throughout the year, as a freshman, you can get stopped and asked the days until things like Army-Navy game, days until Christmas break, days until spring break, days until graduation. Every one of those changes every single day. Mm-hmm. And you had to know those every day for the entire year. And there's a little bit of that. You can see how that translates to some aspects in the military, where it's like, you got 30 seconds. Here's the information. You got 30 seconds to absorb this and then go, and you've got to be able to recall this quickly under stress, because you're going to feel like an idiot if you don't get it right.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's good. I dig it. I understand why. It's just in my head, it was like, man, 4 years of that. I mean, granted, I'm sure the first years of, second year, it gets like you said, it gets a little easier.
They don't ask that stuff of sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Yeah.
That is seniors and juniors asking the freshmen.
Yeah.
But it's, again, it's like, it sucked a bit at the time. You're not getting shot at, which was another major thing, that a lot of the professors were military, and a lot of them at that time, so I was there 05 to 09, dude, they're all come back from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Like, they all had combat tours.
Yeah.
And that was pretty regular, is anytime you complained about something or you pushed back, they were very quick to say, at least you're not getting shot at.
Yeah.
And that'll put you that'll shut you up.
Yeah.
Like, all right, that's, yes, by comparison.
So were they officers then? Like, your professors, were they and other officers as well then that had just served, or they're like
Still active.
What's that?
Still active duty.
Still active duty. Okay.
Assignment, yeah.
Oh, okay. Really? Okay.
So the majority, I would say, I'll mess this up, but probably 85% are active duty military.
Oh, okay.
And then the other 15% are essentially DA civilians.
Oh, okay.
Because West Point is falling under the Department of the Army.
Yeah.
So the officers that they had there they sent them to a 1 year of grad school at Columbia. They would move to West Point in New York with their families. They would commute down to Columbia to get a master's in geography, chemistry, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
And then their assignment would be 3 years of West Point teaching.
Oh, okay.
So they weren't, but they were like, dude, they're infantry officers and armor officers and field artillerymen. And so they would step out of the active force, SF guys, like they step out of the active force, do this for 3 years, and then go back.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was really cool to be able to have, like, my physics teacher was an armor officer that drove to Baghdad.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool, because they can share all sorts of random stories and kind of tell you what you should and shouldn't do. Yeah.
How would they be then, like, a physics teacher then? So then, like, did they get their own training? Because typically, like I said, physics professors go through a whole other pipeline in the civilian sector. So then, like, did these guys actually have physics degrees? I imagine they did, but, like, where did they find the time, or is that something that they had prior to enlisting, or at West? You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
And then were there majors that you guys majored in, like specifically, like you could major in physics? You could, so even though you say you want to do something in the Army, you actually might be getting a degree in some crazy other field.
Yeah, so the program to get somebody, say you or I were active duty and we're getting ready to head out there, there's some degree if you get to choose, but also they kind of tell you, and maybe you're going to be a political science instructor and I'm going to be history. You would move out there, you'd PCS, do a full-on military move coming from Fort Bragg or whatever it is. You're there. Your family would be stationed at West Point, so your kids could start going to school and wife could find a job or get settled in. You would then commute down to Columbia in New York City for a year and get a master's degree paid for by the Army in whatever that thing is they're going to have you teach. Then you would come back the next year and you would begin teaching.
Oh, okay.
Now, the way they were able to do that is a big portion of it is they have you kind of teach yourself. So the instructors, by and large, were just kind of guiding discussion after you were supposed to, like, read all this stuff and teach yourself calculus, which I could never do.
Calculus is terrible.
Yeah,
I did in high school.
Cross board.
I did pre-calc and calc. I hated it. Like, it was the worst decision ever.
So it wasn't the same as, like, having a professor that'd been doing it for 20 years. That said, the civilians that were there were kind of what you would expect out of normal professors. This was their profession. It's what they'd been doing. They had an undergraduate, graduate, maybe PhD in history, and now this is where they taught. In terms of majors, yep, you can choose. I was an international relations major. The majors are totally separate from anything Army, and it has nothing to do with what you end up doing in the Army for the most part. A lot of engineering options, probably like 40 options total, handful of different languages, math, science, history, stuff like that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've never dove with somebody deep into, like, what is West Point offer?
It's unique. A lot of the stuff is kind of,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So then what was kind of like your favorite experience then at West Point? That was kind of like, man, the one thing that stuck out in 4 years.
Favorite experience?
Or memorable, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it was crappy, but you like remember it?
Gosh, I don't know. There's one stands out. Graduation is up there because it's just like, I mean, genuinely, until the moment you walk across stage, I didn't know it was going to happen. So, like, this is great. But that's also a complete blur. Probably just, honestly, man, it's very similar to, like, life in the military. Where, like, there wasn't, like, a thing. it was just sitting in the barracks shooting the shit with some guys on a Saturday night because we couldn't go out, and playing Call of Duty Zombies or something until 2 o'clock in the morning, and my roommate shrieking like a little girl because the zombie showed up on the screen like it always does. And then he, now he's an infantry officer doing badass things. But at that moment, little baby, just that kind of stuff. Just being around each other all the time, and I think it's probably what stands out.
Yeah, I was just saying, bring up Nazi zombies. That was so much fun.
Yeah,
We did
one. Yeah.
It was like we played that in Afghanistan. World at War came out, and I remember we had. It was like before we figured out we had to buy the converter from 220 to 120, so everyone's blowing the Xbox. A little power bank or whatever. So we had to always scrounge for another one, but yeah, we would play Nazi zombies the very first level, and it was like, and then by the end of the deployment, a year had gone by. So then they start coming out with more maps. And so I was getting out of the Marine Corps. That's kind of like a core memory for me.
For sure, man. Yeah.
Nazi zombies with my boys. And especially after we'd gotten back from Afghanistan, it was like, dude, we just got drunk and just played that all the time. But that's awesome. Yeah, that's pretty funny. No, yeah. So then, did you said you're an artillery officer. Is that what you wanted to go in as, or how did you end up going in that direction?
So West Point's, I think, cool in the sense that you kind of get to choose your branch. Branch as in, like, what you do inside of the Army, not Marines, Navy, Air Force. Excuse me. So you choose that about this time of your senior year. So in the fall of senior year, you make that selection. They've changed the process up a little bit, but essentially I guess I should just explain when I was there, you rank order every one of the branches, and they go down class rank. And if you're number one, then you get your number one pick. And eventually, there's only so many aviation slots. There might be 30. So at some point, there's no more aviation slots. And if that's your number one, too bad. What's your number two? And they go down.
Do they ever, the guys come in that were older than 18, that were like, I have my pilot's license, I want to be 160th? You know what I mean? That's the only specific I could think of. Where it's like, yeah, I got my pilot's license through high school. I'm a rotary wing. And I'm 20 years old. Do they have any of those, or is it just
not really?
Yeah, okay. Here's a preference. He wants to be 160th. He has his license. You know what I mean? A little bit leaning towards that. If that makes sense.
They flipped it a little bit sense, but in that example, nobody would be able to maintain their license while at West Point.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
So by the time, and what I noticed was we did have, my first roommate was a tanker, 3rd ID, Thunder Run to Baghdad. It's that was my first guy. Right?
Okay,
Ron Brash, awesome dude. And so he had all this straight combat experience. And then we're talking about how to fold sheets on a bed at West Point. And a lot of those guys did something different. I can't think of any. I think maybe one that was infantry when they were enlisted, and then chose infantry as their branch. The vast majority went off and did something different. But they changed the system up a little bit these last few years, where there's an interview process with branch. So rather than just saying, I want to do this thing, you actually sit down with somebody and they talk to you, and you find out is this going to be a fit or no? And so something like that, hey, I was enlisted, I came up in aviation units, my parents are aviators, I love flying, that would actually now probably play more into it than it did when I was there.
Yeah, because I was wondering that. It's guys are still coming in that obviously aren't just out of that 18 years old, like you said here. I was curious if that would ever, because I would be that way. I'd be like, yeah, man, I have my license. I'm 20 years old. Because after years of working with drones, we worked with a aviation a runway or whatever, company, I guess you would say. It was where you learn how to fly. And I was like, oh, that doesn't take much at all to learn how to fly. So if you're well, I got my license within a year. I had buddies that had their fixed wing. Their dad was a pilot, so they just they had their advanced fixed wing before they even graduated his school. And he just kept paying for it. He was like, it's going to make. He's like, I don't care if you like it or not, just keep going. His brother ended up becoming a pilot. He didn't, but he would his dad would force him. So that he was always like, hey, you want to come ride with me in an airplane? You know what I mean? This is after the Marine Corps days, but even then his dad was still doing it, but they had an advanced license. So I was kind of curious about that. That's the only one I could think of, but you roll in, you're like, yeah, dude, I want to drop Delta dudes off on target. And I have rotary wing, hours. So I feel, you might not be able to maintain, but I feel in our era, that might have been like a thing, but if not, like it's not.
Well, an interesting thing there too is what people are choosing as their branch. So like, I wanted to be infantry real bad until like I went through a couple of the summer trainings, which is mostly infantry focused because that's like the easiest thing to do. And it's, again, kind of an extension of basic training where like, that's mostly what you're doing is like setting up patrol bases and going on ruck marches and sleeping out in the woods.
Life sucks.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember at one point, I think I was talking to my parents and I said, when branch comes around, I need you to tell me, they're like, don't you remember saying that this sucks? Because you make the decision during the school year.
Yeah.
And it's enough time to be like, I don't know, maybe that was kind of cool.
That was
like, no, man, you hated it.
You hate it. It's terrible. Yeah. Yeah. That was like when I got back to the Guard years later, we were digging snow trenches. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I would have gone to division headquarters or whatever, like a few months later. I'm like, I'm not going back to the line. I'll do anything else but go back to the line. Like I did my time, So it's like, especially by that point. But it's one of those funny things. Just like, dude, that sucks. Like, why would
you volunteer to do that?
Why would you volunteer to do that? I think, obviously, if you want to be infantry, like guys that are hardcore, like all the guys, it's like guys that join to become infantry, like, I want to do it. I was like, I scored high enough, which doesn't say much, but I could choose whatever MOS or job within the Marine Corps infantry. So we have like 5 or 6. It was like tow gunner, mortar, 0311, which is the infantryman, ground pounder through and through. Then you had machine gunner, mortars, assaultmen, and then tow gunners. So, and I remember just being like, no, I want to be a ground pounder, but you could hand off your slot to somebody else who didn't score high enough. So obviously didn't really care for scores because they were like, whoever Schmuckatelli could take that slot from me if I offered it to. So I scored one in the higher slots, and they were like, hey, you have priority. What do you want? I'm like, I'm going to be an 11. I'm going to go 311. It's like just the most basic, infantry dude. And then somebody came up to me who just clearly did not score high enough for anything. He's like, dude, can I have your slot? I want to be a tow gunner. And I was like, yeah, here you go. And I handed it to him. I hope he did well as a tow gunner, So that's exactly. So I was like, okay, cool. But it sucks though. We get into the field. I'm like, this blows. The infantry, I was like, the machine gunners get to actually like ride Humvees to the range, shoot the 50s, and then take them back and spend the night in the barracks. Infantry 0311s spent the whole week out in the field, and then you came back for the weekend. Yeah, so the whole time we're out in the field sleeping under, it was like pissing rain in California. Yeah. I'm sleeping in a puddle, but it's like the bivy sack actually held though. So you're just like, oh my God, you see yourself, you're in a, like a 1-inch, 2-inch puddle, and you're just like,
it could come in, but it couldn't go out.
Yeah. Or it was like, you were like, if you move, you might bring it in, but you're just like, don't move because the water isn't like rushing in, and
very, very comfortable.
Yeah. Or you're like, and you try to like roll over to like not a dry spot because it's raining, just like a spot that's not flooded. But yeah. So yeah.
Well, they for what it's worth, they at West Point they really did push infantry. At least while I was there, like there's ranger tasks everywhere.
Yeah, but is there more slots for that?
No, you had to be when I graduated. You had to be at least in the top 50% of the class to get infantry.
Really?
Yeah,
so that was like more competitive.
It was, and that changed over time. Like I talked to a cadet recently, and infantry was towards the bottom, not towards the bottom, but like if you were the lowest ranking. So field artillery was one.
Yeah.
There's a handful of slots like transportation, field artillery. Some of these, like, you could be the lowest ranking, and if you put field artillery as your number 1, you got it. Just because they had so many more slots than anything else. I don't know exactly why that was, but
really.
With infantry, it was the opposite, and now it changes. And this was also like kind of peak GWAT again, like the 05, 09 time frame, and I wonder how that changes when you're not deploying so quickly.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense with the infantry guys because there's really, peak GWAT. They want, I don't say, they want the best, but it's kind of like some more slots, but they're in the competitiveness because everyone's joining the infantry. Now I'm sure peacetime is like, F that.
Cyber's like one of the most competitive.
Yeah, now it is. Yeah, and like cyber 6, 7, 8 years ago was like a new thing. I remember there's a guy in my guard unit who was like IT, and he was thinking about staying in the guard because Minnesota was firing up a cyber team.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not that into the computers, but not that much where I'm like, but yeah, it's like, oh dude, like that's becoming a much bigger thing. But like you said, now I could see that where you need some top brass to get, or people to understand, because that's not just like what it used to be in our era, where it's like, oh yeah, there's some computer nerds, or oh yeah, whatever, track the firewall. Now it's like China is hacking into our systems. You have to counter Russia, and then you have social media. You have to get through bots. What's the propaganda? Now it's like, spreading, as obviously OSINT, even with social media, it's like, what is real, what's not?
Yeah.
What is Russia pushing? What is China pushing? What is the U.S. pushing? What is the Israelis pushing? Because you can just pay, and it's like, or you have bot farms, and and you're really pushing propaganda one way or another, or influence one way or another. It's wild, and it influences people. I think you see that shift way more now. You're starting to see that being, I don't want to say more effective, but pretty effective.
I think it's very, very effective.
Yeah. Opposed to like early years when you were like, what's going on with this, whatever. But now things move so quickly that you're, and also blackouts, and I should say blackouts, but even like, Russia tampering in on, I mean, they're obviously sending, propaganda in one way or another. Ukraine is doing it and they're looking for attention from the U.S. population. Yeah. Because you saw that in the 2024 election, where it's like, you have, even with the conservative Republicans, there's a shift in the movement to be non-interventionist, not helping Ukrainians, just because people are like, we gave too much money up already. So you're seeing that, opposed to early years like us. It's like, oh yeah, let's save everyone, or like, let's get involved in every single proxy war. Like, so you're seeing that, where I'm sure Ukraine wants us to be like, you need to be involved, and Russia's like, hey, let's throw some propaganda towards, to influence not to have the U.S. intervene, or to have a isolationist mindset. So in China, I'm sure, obviously they're doing their thing too. So clearly cyber's it's nasty. It's getting buck wild. They're like the new cool kids on the block. They
might be, yeah, seriously.
Yeah. That's awesome. So then you got artillery. Were you excited for that? Were you pumped?
Number one choice.
My number one choice.
Okay,
got it. Okay.
I wanted to be a fire support officer.
Oh, okay.
That was the job. They have branch chiefs out there, so they have they're recruiting for their branch to tell you why you should do that thing. And I thought the branch chief I liked what he had to say. He explained being a fire support officer, and I was like, that job sounds badass.
Yeah.
And he had been a fire support officer for 25th ID in Afghanistan. So he would just tell stories about sitting on a hilltop calling in artillery mortar strikes to support the infantry. He's like, you're just calling in airstrikes left and right, and then when the aircraft peel off station, I start calling in, howitzers and 155s, and it's like, yes. Are you kidding me? This sounds awesome. And describing the nuances of how you had to go about doing it, which is something I really liked with the job, where it's not just there's a grid, call up a grid, but what's available, where's it firing from, what are the conditions, what are the effects on target, all of that stuff. It just sounded like a really interesting job. And then I was lucky enough that my very first job in the Army was as a fire support officer.